small-town police department has to look at all these clues in this house and figure out what happened. Why is there an empty pill bottle next to his bed? Why is there a smell of lighter fluid all through the house?
Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we're interviewing ABC News correspondent Chris Connelly, who is here to discuss the intriguing case featured on 2020 about the murder of beloved surgeon Dr. Eric Garcia. Chris, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
You know, you've done too much. I mean, I looked at everything you do, and it's so amazing. You go from Rolling Stone to MTV to ABC to all your sports awards and your Murrow Awards. I mean, how tough is it to be able to circumvent multiple areas in news and be able to just keep doing it all?
Well, mostly I feel like I'm lucky to get called on in class. You know, I'm glad that people think I can offer something, to the stories or things that they do in a variety of different genres. You know, what I love about this is that this is storytelling, and we get 2 hours to tell a story. And we have the greatest team who pull all these interviews and elements and videos and pictures and evidence from the cops together to make this story really sing. And this is one of those pieces that you just can't stop listening to and looking at because it's so remarkable.
You know, I used to do criminal defense a long time ago. I'm an attorney. I did some high-profile cases, and I was always amused at the difference between my serious criminal cases and the ones that were the most amusing. For example, I tried a case where a Disney character supposedly touched somebody in the park, and I put on the Tigger costume during the closing. That still gets more attention than the actual case itself.
I can imagine that, yes. Yeah, obviously we're doing murders, and so... there's real hurt and real pain connected to every story that we do. And so we always try to keep the victim and the people who love that victim foremost in our storytelling as we go. But this investigation takes so many twists and turns, and you learn so many secrets that had been hidden about everybody involved as you develop it, that it's a very compelling watch from start to finish.
You know what I noticed about the smaller the town and the less people, the more interested we are. I mean, like Orlando somehow gets, we're not that big, but everyone seems so interested. Alaska, murder happens in Alaska in comparison to a murder happened in L.A. How do you think the differences are with that?
Well, for one thing, Jeff, it's paradise up there. Admittedly, I wasn't there when it was really cold, but if you go there during the warm months, the sun is out the whole time. You see eagles and you see salmon and you see these amazing landscapes, and you think this is like one of the most beautiful places in the world, which I think is what Dr. Eric Garcia thought when he moved from Texas to go up there. You can't get to Ketchikan, Alaska by car. You just can't. You have to take a plane or a boat, and if you take a plane, you still have to take a boat. So 8,000 residents kind of cut off from the world, and you get this essentially elite general surgeon to come up there. So he was immediately beloved, even though he was an outsider, I guess, by the 8,000 residents of the town. And then he turns out to be a nice guy. He's not just a talented surgeon. He doesn't just take care of your mom or your dad or your sister or your kid. He's a nice guy. He asks about how they're doing when you see him in the grocery store. He was a beloved figure, a pillar of the community, as they like to say. So when he turns up missing, and then when cops come into his house and find him dead on the sofa, people are devastated. But there's also a closed-door mystery involved. It's not unusual for a man in his late 50s to be found dead by cops in Alaska. So the first question is, has he died of natural causes? Then, has he taken his own life? Because it gets lonely up there, obviously, when the winter months kick in and seasonal affect disorder is a factor. Or has somebody done something awful to him? And so this, like you say, this small-town police department has to look at all these clues in this house and figure out what happened. Why is there an empty pill bottle next to his bed? Why is there a smell of lighter fluid all through the house? Why are the smoke detectors missing on the wall? And then maybe most significantly, why are hundreds of thousands of dollars in luxury goods, like single malt liquors and special spirits and Franklin Mint coins and things, why have they gone missing from the locked storage area underneath the stairway at his house? And that sets off, a fast-paced investigation that takes them off the Alaska property and onto Washington State, to Seattle. And I guess the long and the short of it is this man, this doctor, Eric Garcia, who made the best decisions in the operating room, who made the best decisions when he was examining you in his personal life, or I guess we'd call it his private life, made decisions that put him at great risk.
Now, they supposedly have a suspect. Have they already had the criminal case on this case yet?
They have. As you'll see, we take you through the trial, and we even take you through the sentence.
That's the whole thing I'm thinking about. I guess they have to do an autopsy, but they have to fly the body out. I can't imagine they did the autopsy in Alaska.
And the autopsy is the thing that's key, because it looks like one thing, but there was no immediate cause of death. And it's not until not just an autopsy, but the toxicology reports come in, that it turns out Dr. Garcia has died from ingesting liquid morphine. Well, how did that happen? Like, where is that from, and how did he take it? And there's no immediate indication next to the body where that could have come from. There are no signs that he's been injected with anything. There are no needle marks. There's nothing like that around. So that sets the investigation in yet another direction.
The old adage when I went to school in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. It seems we are so excited about criminal cases now. It dominates blogs, it dominates, influencers. I mean, it seems like we are just so captivated. And they even have a term for it now. They call it murder porn. I mean, do we ever get off that track, or are we just going to be interested in this forever?
I think there are a lot of people who are trying to figure that out right now. One of the things that occurs to me is we live in a chaotic world. We live in a world that lacks resolution and that doesn't always seem to go the way we expect it should go. And when we tell these stories, they have beginning, middles, and ends. When we set out to do a story like this, you do get this great tragedy at the center of it, but you also get the satisfaction of knowing that those responsible have been held to account and that justice has somehow prevailed. And in a world where it doesn't always seem like that's going to happen, there's a certain satisfaction in watching a story where the guilty are punished and the victims are remembered. And so that's very much the case with our story.
Now, you went to Amherst. One of the first jobs out is working for Rolling Stone, which is just unbelievable. Now, if you had a chance to go back to that kid at Amherst and you said, hey, listen, let me explain what your life is going to be, would you even come close to believing it?
No, I would not. The fact that I got to write for Rolling Stone, essentially fulfilled all my life goals. So I figured just the rest of it was gravy. I figured, well, that was what I wanted to do. And now we'll just see how the rest of it goes. And so I'm just grateful for the chance to have gotten to do some of these things. I hope the young people coming up now get half the same opportunities that I got when I was starting out. And I think that's hard because the media landscape is so different. So I was blessed in any number of ways by things that I had nothing to do with.
Now, a lot of people come to me and they go, how do you get a show? How do you do these things? And people come to you too. How hard is it for you to tell them, hey, listen, it's going to take a lot of work? And that's something a lot of people don't want to hear.
The first thing I tell young people who ask me for advice is never ask people my age for advice, just because the landscape is so different now. There are no magazines anymore, right? There's no physical product of a magazine or a record album or even a videotape anymore. It's all virtual, and that changes the nature of the economics of everything that I did. Everything that I did sort of depended on the fact that there was a magazine that came out every 2 weeks, like Rolling Stone, or every month, like Premiere. So all I can sort of say is try to be as smart as you can and prepare for the strike of lightning that will give you an opportunity. You can't know when that will come. Your responsibility is to be ready when it happens. And that means being as smart as you can and reading as much as you can so that you're prepared when your chance comes.
There's a lot of truth to that, where we talk about the ability, they don't have magazines, newspapers aren't really read anymore. Everything's online. I mean, but doesn't that also give a lot more people the opportunity to get involved without having to do the traditional routes where you might have to get coffee for your editor for 2 years or 3 years?
That's 100% true. People get to writing and they'll get it in front of people. But what we learn is it's one thing to do that, and it's another thing to get somebody's attention. And it turns out that attention is the hardest thing to get for somebody. We only have so much time. Our eyeballs can only focus on so many things. The other thing is that while all the access gates are all open, just like you say, the economics don't exist. When I was at Premier Magazine, I could hire somebody like right out of college, and they could be my assistant, and I and my colleagues could help train somebody to get better at what it is that we did. And in 3 or 4 years, they could be writing stories on their own with their own byline. They could make the kind of money that would let them get married and have a family and stuff. And that whole infrastructure doesn't exist anymore. And that's the thing that's missing, is the ability of people to create a life out of the stuff that I used to do. And that's what I feel bad about people for. There are all those blogs. There's all that stuff online. It just doesn't pay like it used to.
I mean, that's a tough thing because, now we get the money directly for ourselves. We get the advertising dollars if we have a blog and enough people watch it or read it. We can get money for clicks and stuff like that. So we basically, how can I say it? We don't worry about salaries. We are our own salaries. But at the same time,
well, that's the thing. You can't. I tell people my age, you can't bemoan how things have changed. It's a loser's game. You can't say, boy, back in the day, we used to, well, that's different now. We have to be where our viewers or where our listeners are. We have to do whatever it is that we can do to reach them the way they want to be reached. And so it's adapting at whatever age you are. That's so important, because if you want to communicate to people, you have to move quickly with the times, just like they do.
At MTV, I remember watching the first video on MTV. Video killed the radio star. And I think the internet killed a lot of forms of journalism at the same time, but we have to change or perish.
And young people are ready to do that. They're familiar with the technologies. They know how to reach people, and they'll come up with answers that we haven't thought of yet.
The one thing that concerns me with news and journalism now is the fact checking. I don't think we spend as much time. I think stations like yours does. But as far as the internet goes, anything can go out, and we believe it the minute we see it. I mean, how troubling is that?
It's very much a problem. I like to think that people are increasingly savvy about that stuff, but I'm probably every day it seems like brings proof that they're not. So, particularly with the creation of AI and with AI's, only occasional relationship to the truth at this point, that adds another layer to the problem.
Now, one thing I want to discuss, because when it comes to crime and true crime and stuff like this, the media portrayal of criminal influence, how do you think it affects the public when they see something? Do you think they get excited about it, or do you think they're interested in justice?
I think people watch us because they want to see justice done. They want to see, they want to see people, they want to see a story that ends, in a just way. And those are the stories we tell.
We have about a minute left. Why don't you tell me where we can see when the show's going to air and what time people can see it at?
It will be on Hulu as of Saturday morning. You can watch it anytime from there. This one's called Cold Blooded, and it kicks off our season of 2020.
Well, I got to tell you, I've loved watching your career. I can't wait to see where you go from there. It's so amazing to watch you put your foot into so many different areas and succeed. So it was great talking to you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your kind words.